What are the three behaviours that are critical for a parent to take on when they're in a leadership role at home with their family?
Well, thanks for having me, Sandra. This is going to be a fun conversation. Uh, you know, After leaving the teaching field and working with so many parents over 33 years, and then going into leadership consulting and traveling and working with principals and teacher leaders, one day I sat back and I started to think about my background and I said, you know what? There's only one group of people that are natural born leaders, but they don't know they are.
Mm.
And if they became aware, self-aware, they could literally be more intentional and mindful when leading. And that group is all over the world, and they're called parents. Now, one time I said that in an audience of teachers, and of course, a lot of teachers are parents. And when I said that, I looked around the room, and there were literally teachers that were now in the mind of a parent crying because they had never seen themselves as leaders.
Wow, wow, that's so true, Dr. JJ, because I never saw myself as a leader when I was bringing up my two kids. I was a mother,
Mhm.
I was a working mother. And that is so true. And there must have been a lot of aha moments in the room that day.
It was a lot of aha moments. And then they start to understand when I went into becoming self aware. Now that you know you are a leader, and a lot of people don't realize it, and parents don't realize it, they're their child's number one leader. It's not anybody else out there. Maybe when they go to school, their teacher is, their peers are, but the parent is the number one influencer of a child's life. And when they start to understand how important that is, then they'll start to open their mind to even look at the three behaviors that I want to talk about today, that parents may just want to think about and then
Mm-hmm.
act.
Yeah, fabulous. Oh, I'm excited to hear what those three are. I mean, I've got my children are in their 30s now, but I can still use those three behaviors, no doubt.
I know it, right? I don't care how old your kids get, they always look to their parent, always. So let's go to number one, communication. Now, after I left the leadership consulting business, I got connected with you and I started to look at that disc. And oh my goodness, if I were a principal now, every teacher, every parent, every child would go through this DISC process because communication means a lot of different things. It's not just talking, it's also writing, it's also body language. And so the DISC really gives you the how. When you find out your style, you start seeing how you communicate, and then you start to shift and adapt your behavior depending on the style of the person that you're speaking to or the child that you're talking to.
Yes, and that's so true, Dr. JJ, because in the DISC model, I'm a high S. And communication when I was a younger parent was difficult for me because, one, I didn't like to share my feelings. And as a child, my mother said, when we got angry, for example, go to your room. And when you feel better, come out. So, for example, when I had to communicate my frustration with my kids, what would I do? I'd go somewhere first. Yeah.
Well, for me, I'm a high D. And I had to learn because I'm very direct. And so when I remember the time when I was talking to a child, one of the middle school kids that came to my office, and now that I know this work, I was speaking to a high S. Now I'm very direct. That high S, they can get pretty intimidated by being so direct. You got to be calm. And so what I noticed in one of the communication tips I started to learn back then, but now I have the language for it, was I needed to change the tone of my voice.
Ah, yes.
Because high D's, when they're direct, can be, their tone is different. They speak fast and they move on. They don't wait to see if someone's feelings got hurt. Whereas I had to really change the tone of my voice, slow it down, and then all of a sudden the child wasn't crying anymore. That was a communication tip.
Yeah, and it's all communication, isn't it? The tone of your voice, the way you look over those glasses, not just what you're saying, that people relate and react to. Yeah.
Right. And that's when I learned that, I really started to understand the importance of becoming self-aware, because you cannot adapt your behavior if you are not self-aware enough to know what you are projecting. And so then it gives you a pause and you step back, and then you start listening to who's talking to you, and then you adapt and you shift. And it moves me to the second behavior, because once you do that, you could actually improve relationships.
Absolutely. You can, because when I started to do that, for example, my husband, the father of my children, is a high I in the DISC model. So he's very social and he's people orientated. And what I had to learn is that, one, don't tell him off in front of a crowd for a start, when we were out with the kids when they were younger, because my high S is always steadying the pace with systems, with nappies, with milk, with this. I have the hugest backpack on my shoulder, I did. And my husband wasn't worried about that. He was worried about that social interaction. And so I had to realize that and adapt and adjust and my approach with him. But the key, I think, what you first said when we started the conversation is self-awareness, isn't it, Dr. JJ?
Totally self-awareness, because you can't be intentional and mindful when you're leading, first of all, yourself and then others. So with parents, the same thing, this communication, you have children that have different styles and they need a different way to be communicated with, which will build that relationship. I was talking to a parent the other day, and her child is a high SC and she's a high I. So she's always asking a lot of questions, and he shuts her down. Well, then one day they took a 2-hour trip to another city, and he was driving. This was a high schooler that was driving. And what she noticed is while he was driving, he was talking.
Oh.
And so then she went to say something and he stopped talking. And then she realized, wait a minute. So she stopped talking and she didn't talk at all except, well, tell me more, all the way to that trip and then all the way back. She had 4 hours that she learned so much from her son just by being still and letting him talk and drive at the same time.
Wow. That must have been many aha moments for her, because for an I style, that can be quite difficult, because listening is not, it doesn't come easy, does it, Dr. JJ, to an I? And so, wow, that's amazing. And so that would have been quite a harmonious trip, I might say.
And it definitely one where it got them closer, which takes me to my third, and then you'll see how they build on each other. She literally had to monitor and evaluate her behavior. Monitor and evaluate. What happened is she caught herself. That's monitoring yourself. And she evaluated the situation. And that evaluation made her say, I need to stop talking and listen.
Well, that's so true, is it? So monitor and evaluation is the third behaviors. So when you say monitor, what do you mean by that?
Monitor means a whole lot of things. Listening, Okay, that's the biggest monitor. Observing with your eyes, seeing. Sometimes monitoring is looking at a child's homework assignment and then asking that child if they would like any help. I had this one parent, her child, she was now, parents are teaching their children at home. And so her child gave her writing, and the parent read it. And then the parents from the old school. And she picked up a writing pen and she started to, write on it, give her feedback, right?
Yeah.
This child is also a high SC. She was devastated. She was literally devastated. So the parent forgot to ask, may I write on the paper? And then I suggested always use a pencil. Pencils don't hurt.
Oh, that's true. I like that. Pencils don't hurt. That's good. I like that.
And the funny thing is they won't erase. You would think that the reason why you don't use a pencil because the child might erase. They won't erase your comments, but they can feel them better.
True.
Yeah.
True.
So that's another way to monitor and then shift and change what you're asking them to do. So those are a couple of ways: seeing, listening.
And it's also too, when you're monitoring and evaluating, it's not about going into a judgmental mindset either, is it, Dr. JJ?
No.
It's more about practicing empathy while you're monitoring. That's so true. That you can really experience where the other person or your child is coming from, what they're feeling, what they're sensing, even what they're thinking. But it's not about judging what you are perceiving.
Exactly. And that goes back to the way you use your voice. The way you use your voice. I know there's one parent that uses the word, she takes criticism very well. And I said, is there another word for criticism?
Yeah.
And so she said, I said, what about growth opportunity?
Oh, I like that. Growth opportunity.
Growth opportunity. And because it feels different.
It does.
Yeah, it feels different. So
yes, because the high C teenager will take criticism very, very, I say intimately. It goes into their heart, into me. It goes because they are their worst critics. They are very analytical and they are perfectionists. And so when you criticize them, they really feel it, don't they, Dr. JJ? So that growth, what did you say? Growth
opportunity.
Growth opportunity. And another one that I've often used is constructive feedback.
Yes.
Is also another way you can call it.
Exactly. Exactly.
Oh, fabulous. So the three behaviors for a parent to step into a more leadership role. The first one, can you just elaborate again so we can do a summary? The first one was?
Communication.
And the second one?
Relationships, because when you learn how to communicate more effectively, it really helps improve your relationships. And then, of course, you can't communicate and build relationships without monitoring and becoming more self-aware about how you are coming off to your child or your husband or whoever you're speaking to.
Oh, fabulous, fabulous. Thank you so much today for sharing with our viewers those three behaviors.